Welcome to Storytime Audio, where we bring captivating tales to life through the power of storytelling. Today, we delve into a compelling narrative of love, betrayal, and redemption. Join us as we unravel the complex emotions and unexpected twists in Shattered Vows and New Beginnings, the unraveling and redemption after a cheating wife's betrayal. Late summer in California is often unpredictable. August this year had been unusually rainy and warm. Usually, I had to mow the lawn for the first time in early June, but this year it had stretched out a bit longer. At least there was no snow. Last year around this time, we had a freak snowstorm that left 6 inches of snow on the ground. I guess having to mow the lawn early is a small price to pay to avoid snowstorms. With tax season over, it was nice to be outside in the sunshine. My house had an interesting feature. The backyard sloped downward significantly, leading to a small creek and woods behind us. When they built the house, they leveled the front with the road using backfill. This created a sharp slope about halfway down the side of the house, resulting in a basement that was completely enclosed at the front but open at the back. This allowed me to install a bifold service door so I could get the lawnmower and other lawn equipment in there rather than cluttering up the garage. It was one of my favorite features of the house. I had finished mowing the lawn and everything fell into place. I'm allergic to grass, so I was anxious to get upstairs and take a shower. I was just about to get to the top of the stairs when I heard my wife's voice. I had seen her friend Anna's car when I was cutting the grass in front of the house, so I wasn't surprised to hear voices, but then I heard what was being said, and it made my hand pause as I reached for the doorknob. I should probably start by introducing myself. My name is David Smith. I prefer to be addressed by my first name, Dave, but at school, they called me Hogan in honor of the actor David Crane, who played the lead in Hogan's Heroes. I didn't mind, but the show was taken off the air before I was born and is no longer considered a pop culture reference. I graduated from the University of California with a degree in accounting. I earned my CPA degree in minimal time after graduation and now work for a large firm in Los Angeles as a team leader doing audits and similar tasks. It's not the most exciting position, but it pays very well, and I've been able to see the inner workings of many companies. I have a special gift for forensic analytics, building financial trails to investigate things like fraud and money laundering. I'm considered an expert and have even been asked to advise the FBI on 2 cases. When we met at the beginning of freshman year, my wife Lisa was a political science and business major planning to pursue a law degree. I was sitting waiting for the first day of class when she walked in. Lisa had a tall, slender figure like a ballerina. Unfortunately, Lisa was not sitting next to me or assigned to my group project. It took me 4 weeks to approach her and break the ice. I made a silly joke, and she laughed. It wasn't a graceful giggle but a full-blown laugh. We started talking, and I asked if she wanted to grab coffee after class. "I've been waiting 4 weeks for your question," she replied with a smile. For the last 2 years of college, we were rarely apart. Our parents weren't too pleased, but in our senior year, we moved in together. They saw how devoted we were to each other and soon got over it. I couldn't see how it could be better, but it did. I graduated from high school and immediately got a job at one of the big accounting firms in Los Angeles. I was making stupid money for a recently graduated 22-year-old young man. Lisa was accepted to the University of California Law School, and we stayed living in our student apartment. My company offered to pay for my MBA, so I took classes too. I rode the bus to work every day, so I didn't need a car, and that kept costs down. 3 years later, Lisa graduated, and I proposed to her during a celebratory dinner at a fancy restaurant in Los Angeles. 6 months later, we were married. Lisa accepted a position as a deputy district attorney in the Los Angeles County Prosecutor's Office. We decided to buy a house in Santa Monica, which was the county seat and where the courthouse was located. The regional train line ended there, so I was able to take the train to work every day. It was an 80-minute drive one way, but better than taking the crowded highways. Lisa and her mother found a house. It was a great starter home with 3 bedrooms. One bedroom was set up as an office with 2 desks. I would work from home occasionally, and Lisa needed her own space for legal work. Another bedroom would be a guest room, and of course, the last room was the master bedroom. Plus, it was close to her parents' house. Lisa convinced me that it would be a built-in nanny when we had kids. I was an only child and had always wanted siblings. Lisa and I discussed kids back in my first year of university and decided to wait until Lisa had settled into her career before we started trying. But now we had reached that point, and 2 nights ago, we agreed to stop taking Lisa's birth control and start trying for a baby. I was happier than I had ever been. Then, what I heard made my hand linger on the doorknob. "Dave and I have decided it's time for me to get pregnant," excitedly announced Lisa. This excited her friend Anna Johnson. Both women made the same high-pitched sound that made me think of whales accidentally beached on the Jersey Shore. Standing on the stairs, I grinned at their excitement, which matched my own at becoming a father. I reached for the door again when I heard a question that wiped the smirk off my face and the happiness out of myself. "That's great, Lisa," said Anna, "but what are you going to do about John?" "With John?" hissed Lisa at her friend. "Dave's outside mowing the lawn." There was a pause, and I could see her looking around, waiting for me to appear. Then she spoke again. "I already told John the first was ending the affair. He was fine with it. With Grossman stepping down as senator, John thinks he has a real chance. Getting caught having an affair with a married staffer would be very ugly." Just like that, 3 sentences shattered my world. John Williams was Lisa's boss in the DA's office. He was a widower in his early 40s. His wife, Anne, had died of breast cancer, leaving him a single father to their daughter, Emily. John was a real political animal, and Lisa enjoyed telling me stories about his maneuverings in his party to run for higher office. I guess I just found out how my wife had access to all this secret information. "Really?" said Anna. "Just like that? You've been hot and heavy for 6 months, and you're just going to dump him like a hot potato?" The teasing doubt in her voice made me want to rip Anna's head off. She was a classmate at university, and I knew her before Lisa. I knew Lisa and Anna were best friends now, but I always assumed she was my friend too. I guess I was wrong. "Stop it," Lisa protested, giggling. "You're so bad. John is a great lover, but it was just a fling. I love Dave, but John was just taking me and using me however he wanted. Now that Dave and I are going to have a baby, I don't want to take any chances. I love Dave, and I will be a good and faithful mother." How many more cliches are we going to use here, I wondered. All that's left is to come home and find an unfamiliar car in the driveway and entertain men in my bed to end it all. I wanted to run into the room and scream. I wanted to trash the room, but my muscles were restrained by paralysis. I was so stunned I couldn't move. My heart was pounding in my ears. "So cold turkey?" asked Anna again. Lisa giggled. "Well, not exactly cold turkey," she admitted. "I have a conference with John in San Francisco next week. We'll have our farewell fun there. I'll miss him, of course, but Dave and the baby are more important." I couldn't take it anymore, but I didn't know what to do. I loved Lisa, but it was killing me. My business training was starting to take its toll. I needed to step back and think. I needed to make a plan. I started stomping up the steps like I was climbing a mountain. Then I opened the door and walked into the kitchen. Lisa and Anna were sitting there with cups of tea in front of them. Did I see a hint of guilt on Lisa's face? "Honey, are you okay?" she asked in a concerned voice. I realized tears were streaming down my cheeks. "Allergies," I mumbled. "This is going to be a bad summer." "Well, go upstairs and take a shower. Just drop those clothes by the bathroom, and I'll wash them right away so they don't contaminate your closet. I bought you a new pack of Claritin last week, which is in the medicine cabinet." "Thank you," I managed to mumble, heading for the stairs. I needed time to think. The next morning was Monday, and I used the excuse of an early meeting to get up and out of the house before Lisa got out of bed. The night before, I had used my allergies as an excuse to go to bed early because my emotions were running high. Sitting on the train, I thought again about what I had heard. On the one hand, my wife was unfaithful, but it ended up being purely sexual to stay with me and bear me a child. Some would say I should leave it at that and be happy that my wife is back in the marriage, planning to be a good wife and mother. However, there is a voice in my head that says that if she did it once, what's to stop her from doing it again in the future? 10 years from now, when the kids are in school, won't she have another affair? Then there's the divorce with the kids, in which Lisa will likely get the kids, and I'll get a hefty alimony and maintenance bill. Being an accountant and business analyst, I had to think in terms of risk and reward. I found myself doing the same thing here. It came down to the fact that my trust in my wife was completely shattered. The "just sex" excuse overlooks what is the really important issue in these cases. It is a complete lack of respect for the partner. The cheater knows they are doing wrong and hurting the other person. Otherwise, they would be doing it openly, and I would have known about it from the beginning. Don't get me wrong, I don't think I would have ever put up with her sleeping with someone else, but at least if she had talked to me about it, some respect would have been shown. Lisa's behavior proved to me how much respect she had for me. I was working, but part of my brain was focused on what I should do. I had no proof other than an overheard conversation. I hadn't even noticed much of anything in the last 6 months that the affair had apparently been going on. A direct confrontation without evidence would be a big risk with little likelihood of reward. Lisa would deny it. John Williams would deny it. Taking any case through the courts would be financial suicide since every judge, politician, and lawyer in the surrounding counties knew Williams. I would be buried to keep his name clean. I considered just leaving and starting over somewhere else. It was tempting, but the house would be like an anchor around my neck. Lisa couldn't afford it on her paycheck alone, and we had almost no equity. She'd have to sell it almost immediately to avoid foreclosure, and with the current state of the market, that was unlikely. It would have destroyed both my credit history and hers. Being a CPA with a bad credit history is not a good decision when looking for a new position. How can someone trust you with someone else's money when you clearly don't know how to handle your own? I needed proof before I could do anything about it. I would have gotten it, but it came from the most unlikely source. 3 days later, I still hadn't found any evidence to back up what I'd heard. Lisa's personal laptop was clean, no secret email accounts, no hidden messages, no clothes stuffed in a box in the back of her closet, and no suspicious receipts. Absolutely nothing. Then, out of the blue, Lisa called me at work and told me we were invited to a political announcement party at John Williams's house on Friday night. I assumed it would be his high-profile announcement that he was running for a seat in the U.S. Senate. I had thoughts of a high-profile announcement of my own, but I still had no proof. We arrived just in time for the start of the event. John had a nice mansion near the hills of Los Angeles with a small horse farm. A large tent was set up in the backyard for all the guests, and when we walked in, standing at the head of the receiving line like a king was John Williams himself. Being a widower, John didn't have a wife to play hostess, but he had apparently enlisted his 21-year-old daughter, Emily, for the role. She stood by her father's side, greeting guests as if she was born to do so. When it was our turn, John smiled broadly at Lisa and exclaimed, "Lisa, you did it. How wonderful." He kissed my wife chastely on the cheek, then turned to me. "David, it's good to see you again. I'd be lost without your wife, but I realize I'll have to give her up soon when you start expanding your family." He laughed at his own joke. "Just let me have her when you're done with her, and there will be no hard feelings." There was laughter again. Lisa even blushed a little, and I felt like finishing the smirk off his face. I took his hint, which he obviously thought had gone over my head. Who knows what the future will bring? I said in an even, neutral tone, not hostile but by no means friendly either, the same way I report the results of an audit. John blushed slightly, and Lisa elbowed me, muttering something about rudeness. John seamlessly moved on to the next guest, leaving us alone with his daughter. Lisa was an incredibly attractive woman, but Emily was a vision. Even in my inner anger, I noticed her dark red hair and brilliant smile that made me think of a young Maureen O'Hara. She had the combination of good looks, a healthy figure, and radiant skin that photographers dreamed of and so often had to use Photoshop to achieve. John Williams had the perfect political family. He looked like the perfect wise statesman and family man. Losing his wife to cancer provided him with the perfect narrative of tragedy, and Emily, with her beauty and accomplishments, added the ideal touch. "David," Emily said excitedly, hugging me tightly. It wasn't a polite hug at a party, it was a full body squeeze. Parts of her body pressed against me, which felt really good. "You look great. No wonder Lisa has been hiding you. You never come to any of our parties. You shouldn't be working so hard, it's not healthy." Somehow she said it all in one breath in less than a second. My mood changed from fury to complete shock. I made a few polite remarks about how beautiful she looked and was about to leave when two things suddenly came to my attention. First, Emily never said hello to Lisa, and second, what was with the parties? Lisa didn't give me a chance to ask as she herself rushed over to greet the young woman. Then we had no choice but to give way to the next guests in line. As Lisa and I went to socialize, I wondered what Emily knew. After pouring my wife a drink, I asked, "What kind of parties was Emily talking about?" Lisa only smiled and snorted dismissively. "She was just teasing you, prankster. John sometimes holds team meetings and strategy sessions here. He says he thinks better with a drink in his hand and at the bar. You never know who might be in the next booth. She was home a few times when we met here." Well, that's when I figured it out. John was entertaining my wife right at home under the guise of team meetings. They could even be real meetings where Lisa was the last one to leave, or maybe she left first and came back after everyone else had gone. That wouldn't allow the legal team to speculate about why Lisa always stayed behind to help the boss clean up. With a dead wife and daughter away at college, he didn't need to find a secluded hotel room, I mused aloud. "Honey, what are you talking about?" Lisa asked, puzzled. "Oh, nothing," I quickly replied. "Just thinking out loud. Let's go mingle." For the next hour, Lisa didn't take a step away from me. We talked to a few of her coworkers, and several of them mentioned our plans to have a baby and how sorry they would be to lose Lisa for a while, but how happy they were for us. Honestly, I was a little embarrassed. Why did all these people know about our plans? An hour later, John Williams called everyone to attention. His daughter stood next to him and smiled. He started by thanking everyone for coming and then began by announcing his big campaign. Everyone was expecting it but was still excited. I noticed the publisher of the local newspaper and one of his reporters taking notes. I'm sure there would be a lot written about it in tomorrow's paper. I won't bore you with the rest of the details of the party. It would have been an enjoyable time had my heart not been shattered and my brain not been working at maximum capacity, thinking how to prove it all. About 90 minutes after the grand announcement, Margaret Williamson, the first assistant district attorney, came in and said John wanted to meet with his staff. John was an elected official, and Margaret was a senior staffer who actually ran the office. DAs could come and go every 4 years, but Margaret was a constant. A very tough woman but respected in the legal community for her honesty and integrity. An older female lawyer was a big part of the reason Lisa took the position. "I apologize for stealing your wife away from you, David," Margaret offered. "John wants to discuss office organization as soon as he finishes campaigning." After a moment, they both left. I stepped away from the small cluster of other spouses remaining at the meeting and headed toward the other side of the large pool across from the patio where the party was being held. There was a wicker swing chair hanging from chains. It was in the shade, so people could see me if they looked closely, but I wouldn't be conspicuous. In other words, it was the perfect place to try to gather my thoughts. I had been sitting for less than 5 minutes when a voice invaded my solitude. "So this is where you're hiding," the voice purred. I looked up as Emily lowered herself onto the wicker swing next to me. She had arranged herself so that she was sitting facing me without saying a word. Her little black dress sat on her tanned thighs in a way that clung to her body, hinting at what was underneath but revealing nothing, seductive and innocent at the same time. It spoke volumes about my state of mind that I noted it almost academically. "You look like a man who has the weight of the world on his shoulders," she commented. I didn't really feel like talking about this with the daughter of my wife's lover, no matter how beautiful she was. "We've been very busy at the office, lots of audits," I said, trying to end the conversation. "Really?" asked Emily in an interested tone. "I just finished my last accounting course in school. We talked for several classes about the use of forensic accounting in law enforcement. I found it very fascinating. Even in my grief, that surprised me." "Really?" I asked in a disbelieving tone. "Well, it's not pretty or anything, but it's really detective work to extract all the right pieces of information from tons of other facts and put them together to get a clear picture. Plus, since some people are trying to hide that information, it gets even more complicated." "Most people don't see it that way," I admitted. Emily began to elaborate on what she had learned from the classes and why she had enjoyed them so much. I had to say, I was impressed. I've had people completing internships at the firm who couldn't have communicated the topic so well. Focusing on her words helped me dismiss both her looks and, more importantly, the rage boiling inside me. I felt myself sinking into my role as a mentor. It helped me take my mind off the emotional turmoil a bit. "You really enjoyed the class," I remarked. "You seem to have grasped the topic very well." Emily blushed at my praise. For a moment, I saw a sweet girl who was genuinely touched by my praise. "I was actually thinking about joining the FBI when I graduate." Dad wants me to become a prosecutor or go to work at one of his friend's law firms. I don't think that's what I want to do. You should follow your own dreams, not your father's, I advised, honestly not opposed to ruining John's plans. I've done a little work with the FBI when audits turned up something criminal. Sharp people. Before Emily could respond, Lisa stepped out of the shadows. That's where you disappeared to, she said teasingly. You didn't do anything obscene, did you? Emily turned to my wife and smiled radiantly. We were just talking about Dave's job. We just discussed it in class, and I wanted to get an expert's opinion. Well, Dave is just that, Lisa said proudly. I looked at one of his audit reports where an employee was embezzling money using his boss's login credentials. Dave caught on that some of the transfers were happening when the guy was on a business trip, but the login was from the corporate office. Most of us would have stopped when we recognized the boss's name. Dave kept digging. I could have gotten a conviction against that employee the first day out of law school. Lisa looked at me with pride on her face as she told this little story. It embarrassed the hell out of me. How could she be proud of me and claim to love me while she was in a 6-month relationship with her damn boss? A shadow of my confusion must have flashed across my face because Lisa asked, "What's wrong, honey?" "Nothing," I replied. "Just thinking about a problem." "Well, stop it. It's a party," Lisa admonished. She struggled to catch her breath and said, "Dave, you'll never be able to guess the opportunity I've been given. John and Margaret want me to take over the administrative work since I plan to go on maternity leave as soon as you finish your job. That way, when I leave, there won't be any work left to do. I'll be working directly for Margaret." Something in my heart twitched at the thought of Lisa being away from that bastard John. My hopes were dashed after only a second. "I'll have to travel sometimes," Lisa continued. "I'll be delivering important papers to John during the campaign, so I won't be involved in his campaign, but I'll still get to see some of the behind-the-scenes action. It's going to be so much fun." I felt my heart shatter again. I knew I'd heard Lisa say she planned to end her affair so we could have a baby, but I could easily imagine her going back to her affair in anticipation of being part of the campaign. And if she gets pregnant, who's to say the baby will be mine? The sex is about my height and color. Without a DNA test, that would be very difficult to determine. My anger started to rise, but I held it back. Now was not the time. Emily started talking to Lisa about her new position in the campaign. Soon, they were engrossed in their conversation, and I was forgotten. I took this opportunity to pull myself together. After tonight, I would start making plans. I needed to counter John's political power somehow, but frankly, I had no idea how to do it. The answer showed up in my office 2 days later. "Your appointment is at 4, my assistant called through the open door. We're not allowed to call them receptionists anymore." I looked at my Outlook calendar and didn't see anything booked there. Before I could answer, she walked in. "Hi, Dave," Emily said, closing the door behind her. "I hope you don't mind, but I told Mary we had an appointment to discuss my career and how Lisa works for my father." I politely rose from my chair. "Glad to see you, Emily. I was just working on some reports. Please, have a seat." I gestured for her to take one of the chairs in front of my desk. When she was seated, I sat down. "What did you want to talk about?" The happy expression on Emily's face suddenly disappeared. "I think you know, Dave," she said softly. "I saw it in your face when you were talking to my father. I'm so sorry he destroyed such a good guy." I was stunned. This was not what I had expected. "What are you talking about?" I asked cautiously. Emily grimaced. "About that person, known as my father, having an affair with your wife." I leaned back in my chair at such a straightforward answer. "Did you just find out?" I asked softly. Emily nodded. "I'm very sorry. How did you find out?" "About 3 months ago," Emily admitted. "I don't know when it started, but I found out in February. One Friday, I went home early, and they were having one of their meetings at our house. I had a late lunch with a high school friend, so I just ran in there to drop off my stuff, say hi, and leave. Dad asked when I'd be home, and I said after dinner. Turns out my friend was sick and couldn't make it. I grabbed a bite to eat and went home. I saw Dad and Lisa. I took a picture of them." "You took a picture of them?" I asked in shock. I also wondered if I could get copies of the pictures. That would be very helpful in the divorce. As if reading my mind, Emily reached into her bag, pulled out a large envelope, and placed it on my desk. "Here are pictures from that day and a few others." She paused and grinned. "Dad installed a security system in the house. Everything outside is locked down, and there are cameras in several rooms. If you know the website and have the key fob and password, you can get into the house from almost anywhere. There's a thumb drive with video on it, too. I was shocked by this. John's daughter was handing me everything I could possibly need to divorce and destroy her father. Why? I asked. The sad expression on Emily's face was replaced with anger. Because, she said in a quiet voice, I hate that. Man. More than you ever could. I answered nothing but waited. After a moment, she spoke. Dad met Mom when she was in college. He was an aspiring attorney who was assigned to the Los Angeles crime squad. Mom had come from Ireland to study. Her family lived in affluence but died in the Londonderry bombing. She came here to get away from the turmoil. Her voice took on a soft tone that she had probably adopted from her mother. Mom dated some loser who hit her so hard she ended up in the emergency room. Dad was assigned the case. They met, the guy went to jail, and a year later they were married. Dad was always ambitious. He got a smart, beautiful woman with an exotic accent. Mom got a strong man who would protect her. I came along a few years later. Dad wanted me to do gymnastics. He thought his daughter's performance in the Olympics would do wonders for his political career. Do you know how most gymnasts' careers end? She asked. I shook my head and replied, I never really thought about it. Emily smiled. I was told to do cheerleading and be an all-American girl. I didn't mind as I enjoyed performing, but then I realized I was just a prop for my father's ambitions. Mom knew about it almost from the beginning. Dad had been having affairs almost from the moment they were married. Mom knew and begged him to stop, but she was too weak to do anything about it. She felt trapped. She was a confirmed Catholic, so divorce was out of the question. Emily paused for a moment, and I let her gather her thoughts. After a moment, she continued. Sometimes I wonder if her bad reaction to the cancer treatment was the result of her subconsciously wanting to die or actively sabotaging the treatment. Anyway, I was with her in the hospital when she died. The official story goes that my father was in court seeking a murder charge. He got the doctor to change the time of death. He was actually entertaining his assistant at her apartment to celebrate. He just displayed the mom as a trophy, and the press loved the story of how they met. Heroic prosecutor goes to rescue a woman. Hell, he beat her more than once himself from what I've seen. Why are you telling me all this? I asked. Because you don't deserve it, Dave. My father, he's not a very nice man. After my mom died, he hid his affairs until I went away to college. Then he started having meetings at the house, and they aren't just for his work. He also holds meetings for some of the charity groups he's involved in. I know for a fact that he sleeps with 2 other women from these groups. One of the poor women actually thinks it's true love and is going to leave her husband. Lisa thinks that? I asked. I knew I'd heard that, but I was still curious. Emily shook her head and replied, no, she seems to think it's just entertainment. They say power is the ultimate aphrodisiac. Lisa seems to be proof of that. I heard her talking to Dad about some senator they were dating and how she felt when she got back to Santa Monica. I cringed at such a rude remark. I even remembered that day. I'd come home to a wild woman, and it had been one of the best nights of my life. The cherished memory was now tarnished because I knew my wife probably wasn't even thinking about me at that moment. So what do you want? I asked. To her credit, Emily looked me straight in the eye as she answered. I want you to end your marriage to that cheating wife. I want my father's career ruined to the point where he will never be elected dog catcher in a town full of cats. I thought about just sending my stuff to the papers or even the other side, but he has too many friends. I think together we can make them pay. Won't it be harder for you to finish school? I asked. She shook her head again. No, my mom left me her inheritance as a trust fund. I didn't touch it, but if I needed to, I could pay for the rest of my tuition and MBA and still have a good chunk of money left over. If your mom had that much money, why didn't she take you and leave? She could have gone to Ireland where your father wouldn't have been able to get to her, I asked. Emily wrinkled her nose. Like I said, she was raised Irish Catholic. She was taught that divorce was not an option no matter what happened. Mom held on to her faith to the very end. That's the only thing that makes me think her death was unconscious rather than intentional, since they also consider suicide to be the unpardonable sin. I had to admit, I couldn't see anything but the truth in Emily. She had said she wanted to destroy her father's career, and the fact that I had this information didn't bode well for his ambitions. I couldn't imagine that this could be some kind of trap. If Lisa and John wanted to wipe me off the face of the earth, they could do it openly in court. That kind of despicable act was only appropriate if they were desperate, like me. A plan began to form in my head. I needed Emily to help me with a few items. If nothing else, it would show me how badly she was bent on destroying her father. Okay, I agreed, but I don't want to destroy him by publishing those pictures or even calling his name in the divorce. Emily looked at me in surprise. Why not? She demanded. Her face flushed with passion, and she took a breath to start some kind of speech. I stopped her with a raised hand. I didn't say we wouldn't destroy him, but I don't want to deal with the bad press when my cuckolded husband finds himself in a political scandal. Instead, I want to destroy what he's worked toward his entire life, destroy his power and influence, and I can have a quiet and peaceful divorce that no one will worry about. Emily looked at me with shock on her face. After a moment, a sly smile appeared on her face. What do you want from me? She asked. I smirked. I'm going to do what I do best. Get me his financial records, personal and campaign. They got Capone thanks to tax evasion. Having gotten to know your father, I have no doubt I can find something. And if you don't? She asked. I smiled. I can do something else. For the next 3 days, Emily and I kept busy. She installed a keystroke logger on her father's personal laptop and home computer. She also made a full backup of his computer's hard drive. We customized their security system so that it would upload the recordings to a cloud space that I knew of, which was physically located overseas. How nice of the man to put a bug in his own home for me. For my part, I didn't tap Lisa's phone. Thanks to Emily's evidence, I didn't need anything else, but I did activate a GPS tracker designed for parents watching their kids. It basically used cell towers for location unless I sent a command to activate the GPS. I just didn't want it to catch me at home when I was busy working. I faked a groin injury the day after Emily first came to see me. That gave me an excuse not to be intimate with my wife. I never thought I would have to make up an excuse not to be intimate with my beloved wife. After hearing about the number of John's partners, I didn't want to risk even more than I unknowingly did. Besides, I don't think I could have done it without venting my anger. By the way, I made a doctor's appointment to get checked for STDs. Nothing showed up at first, but some of them, like HIV, can go months without testing positive for antibodies. Lisa went to the conference in San Francisco for her last date with John. Not surprisingly, she was very excited about the trip, leaving her hanging for the last few days. Some guys might have given her a farewell entertainment as revenge. My problem was that somewhere inside, I still loved her. I could never trust her again, but that didn't mean I didn't still love her. But I also couldn't bear the thought of entertaining her after what I'd learned. Thursday morning came, and Lisa was waiting with her packed bag for John and a junior associate from their office who was traveling with them to the conference. I wondered if the young guy knew he was their cover. I'll be home Sunday afternoon, Lisa said, walking over to me after dropping her bag at the front door. I sat at the table with my back to her and sipped my coffee. She wrapped her arms around me and leaned in so that her lips were right next to my ear. I hope you're feeling better so we can start on the baby, she whispered. Her tone would have brought a dead man back to life, and her scent brought me back to more innocent days. I wanted to cry right there, but I managed to restrain myself. All I sit so it heals, I assured her. I stroked her hand and kissed her forehead. I wish I didn't have to go to this. It would be so much better to just stay home with you. You can always tell John that something more important came up, I said. It just came out, and from the way she looked at me, she heard something in my tone. What's your problem with John? She asked in an amazed voice. First, you were rude at the party, and now you sound like you hate the man. I forced myself to calm down and shrugged. Honestly, I've seen too many hotshots like John who think they're untouchable and the epitome of power. They're the big fish in a small pond. They sell the illusion of power and get people to buy into it, like that mayor in South Carolina last year. Big powerful guy embezzled the city's money by sleeping with 3 married women. Now he's serving 10 years in federal prison, and they're all divorced and publicly humiliated. I have the same feeling about John. If he makes it to Washington, he'll be entertaining unsuspecting interns within a week. But eventually, his wheels will fall off, and his scandals will splatter everyone around him when they do. Lisa looked at me in shock. She'd heard me rant about those scumbags before, but she'd never connected John to them before. I probably should have kept my mouth shut, but it felt good to let it out. Even though the marriage was over, I also felt it was only fair to warn Lisa. I still loved her, even if I would never trust her again. "Dave, that's a terrible thing to say about John," protested Lisa. "He's a good man who's done a lot for the people of this county." "He's not like that." I heard the almost pleading tone in her denial. In a timing that could not have been anticipated, we heard the sound of a car horn outside the house. John had arrived. Lisa sighed disappointedly. She cast a look at me in which regret and almost fear flashed quickly. "I'll be home in 4 days," Lisa said in a conciliatory tone. "Then we can talk about it, but be prepared, love. We have a baby to start with." Then she wrapped her arms around me and kissed me. "Have a good week," she breathed out. "I love you." "I love you too," I replied. She picked up her bag and opened the front door. "Bye, honey," she called over her shoulder. "Bye, Lisa," I said. Then I closed the door. 30 minutes later, I walked out to catch the train back to town. Emily and I had an appointment at the FBI, and it turned out that I didn't have to prepare any evidence. I would rate John Williams's embezzlement abilities as moderately intelligent. Emily and I met at her off-campus apartment to go over the documents she pulled from his computer. Pretty standard procedure. By my calculations, he had about $2 million stashed away in an offshore account. At least that's how much he transferred into it. But I can't be sure it's still there because those records weren't included. Most of this money came from various small donors who wouldn't raise suspicion with the IRS. But why were people from out of state donating to the DA's campaign? I was able to track down several of them. People associated with defendants whose cases were dismissed or plea bargains with unusually lenient sentences. It was Emily who found the biggest bombshell. It turns out she wasn't an only child. Along the way, John had fathered 2 more children. One of them was born 3 years before his wife died. The mother was one of his co-workers at the time. The third child was born 8 months after his wife's death to an 18-year-old female volunteer at the hospital where his wife was treated. John transferred $2,000 a month from campaign contributions to each woman as poll research consultants. Emily nearly destroyed her own apartment in anger. That red hair really is a warning. By the time Lisa and John left, we had already figured out everything in John's notes. There were still questions, but we didn't have enough resources to get to the information, so I wrote down all the findings and set up a meeting with a senior FBI agent I worked with in the Los Angeles office. Emily came in to tell him the story we had made up. Emily said that after taking a course in forensic accounting, she wanted to look at some actual records. She decided to look at her father's records out of innocent curiosity. When she noticed some oddities, she called me because my wife had worked for her father and knew of my experience. Gary was a seasoned professional. He knew there was more behind it, but we dropped a gift-wrapped present in his lap, and he didn't push it. A dirty prosecutor in his own backyard. A dirty prosecutor who just launched a campaign for the U.S. Senate. This career-making case fell like manna from heaven. We caught a cab and went back to Emily's apartment since she had classes late, and I walked to the 30th Street station to take the train home. I was already thinking of packing my things and leaving when Lisa came home. Gary promised to expedite the case and at least subpoena John's records by Wednesday. It was unlikely the investigation would get to that time. The man would find out how powerless he was when all the rats abandoned his ship. Lisa called me while I was on the train ride home. She said she called early because they were going out to some big dinner and it would be very late before she got back to her room. I had no doubt she wasn't planning on staying in her room tonight. I made a few vague remarks saying it was fine. She caught my distracted tone and asked what was wrong. "I just had a meeting with FBI agents on a case," I replied. "I'm on the train, plus the investigation is still ongoing, so I can't talk about it." All of this was the absolute truth. "Sounds like you've really been hurt by this," Lisa said, her tone concerned. "Yeah, but it's going to be awful. It'll probably make national news when the whole story leaks out." "Really?" asked Lisa, looking a little intrigued. "Can't you give me a little hint?" I couldn't help myself. Crooked politician, bribes, money laundering, adultery. Typical crap for a summer romance. "Anyone I know?" she asked. I grimaced. "I've already said too much. If I say anything else, the Bureau will shut me down." "Oh, you're no fun," Lisa pouted. "Don't worry, honey, your secret is safe with me." We said our goodbyes, and she hung up. As I walked into the house, it hit me. my marriage was over. Lisa and I had dated and been married for 10 years. I never expected to be single again, but that was what I was facing now. Eventually, I just sat on the couch and waited for the sun to go down. I felt like I was watching my life fade away over the horizon. It was many hours after sunset before I stirred again. It was noon on Saturday when I emerged from my state of self-pity. Ironically, I was mowing the lawn again when I saw a BMW convertible pull into my driveway. I stopped the mower as I watched Emily get out of the car. I turned off the engine and greeted her. "Well, you look better than I expected," Emily said. "I half expected to have to pull you out of a bottle or off a ledge." I snorted. I had a lot of thoughts about both options last night, but work had to be done. I said, "Besides, it keeps me busy." "Not seen a lawyer?" she asked. I shrugged. "I did that on Tuesday before they even left. The paperwork will be ready on Monday. I arranged to do an audit at a client in Austin and leave on Tuesday. Usually, business trips like this last 3 days, and then I work remotely until the report is done. In this case, I'll be there for 3 weeks. I shrugged again. I guess that's the coward's way out, but I don't want to be here when this whole mess is over. Emily nodded in agreement. She knew it would draw attention to her too as John's daughter. Well, I'm glad you're thinking ahead, the redhead said. But I realize that's what you're good at, she smiled again. Now I know how to plan too. Okay, here's my plan, Emily announced. I'm going to help you finish your work here, and then you're going to come over to my place. We'll have fun, and you can even ogle me all you want. I have a swimsuit you'll just love. The last part was said in a voice that could have raised the dead. I tried to justify myself. Emily, I'm still married, I protested. And I don't think I'll be ready for anything else for a while. You need to blow off some steam before you blow up, the red-haired girl insisted. Besides, you know the old saying, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Her look was playful, sly, and guess all at the same time. I couldn't help but laugh. By one of those bizarre coincidences that prove truth is stranger than fiction, we ran into Anna after I finished my yard work. I cleaned up, and we headed out for a late lunch at a nice restaurant. I wasn't in the mood for revenge entertainment, but it was nice to get out of the house, and going on a date with a woman as nice as Emily and who looked just like Emily wouldn't be difficult at all. As I pulled up to the restaurant, I noticed a car parked a little closer to it. It was Anna's car. I always thought it was a crime to put OBX and Jersey Shore bumper stickers on a Mustang GT. I almost told Emily to turn around and find another place, but I didn't. Instead, I did something completely uncharacteristic of me. It was all done on a whim. After all my careful planning, something inside me just exploded when I saw Anna's car parked in that lot. I nonchalantly put my arm around the red-headed beauty, and without further ado, I ushered her into the restaurant. I tipped the host to seat us at a particular table. It was somewhat shaded, but it was in plain view when we returned from the restroom. I seated Emily facing outward and settled myself next to her. She smiled as I took her hand. "What brought this on?" she asked with a sweet smile. "Not that I'm complaining." I laughed. "Remember when I told you about how I found out about my cheating wife and her friend Anna? Well, her car is parked right down the street." Emily broke into a throaty laugh. "So I'm going to be the other woman? Ooh, I can live with that." She leaned forward and kissed me. Our entree arrived, and I was frankly enjoying myself. The subterfuge was forgotten as I enjoyed Emily's company. Her keen sense of humor was killing me. Never before had I heard accounting services sound so dirty. I happened to glance over and noticed Anna walk past us. I pointed her out to Emily. "Oh my God," she giggled. "I was so looking forward to this." With those words, she leaned forward to kiss me. I was so immersed in the sensation that I was surprised to hear Anna yelling at me. "Dave, what the hell are you doing?" she yelled. "Who's the slut running after your wife while she's out of town? I thought better of you." I have no doubt the whole restaurant heard her. I let go of Emily and turned to look at my ex-girlfriend. "What's your problem, Anna?" "It's just a little carefree fun before Lisa and I settle down and have a baby." "Can't you keep yourself from doing that? People are trying to eat." Anna stared at me like I'd hit her with a dead fish. "What?" she started. "Come on, Anna. Lisa's doing the same thing. I'm sure she's having fun with her boss right now, has been for months. So I figured it was only fair that I entertain the boss's grown daughter." I think Anna almost had a heart attack. I felt Emily start to giggle. "You know about that too?" she stammered. I know about being a faithful husband who doesn't realize anything while my wife is running around with the help of a woman I considered a close friend, I said with contempt. Anna turned pale. Go away, Anna, I said. She turned and ran away from the table. A few minutes later, we heard a noise. It was Anna leaving the restaurant. Well, it was fun while it lasted, Emily said with a slight chuckle. I really wished she'd been there longer. Her smile made me blush. You know she's probably on the phone with your wife right now, she added. Probably, I agreed. I'm giving her 5 minutes before my phone goes off. However, if she leaves right now, it'll be 5 hours to get home from San Francisco. That would give us time for dessert, and that would leave me plenty of time to get home and pack. Too bad I won't get to see you in a bikini like you promised. Emily laughed again. Oh, I guess we can do that another time. She reached out to grab my shirt and pull me closer. You know, my semester ends in a week and a half, she whispered in my ear. I've always wanted to see Austin. I barely had time to catch her words before her tongue dug into my ear. Yeah, the proverbial stuff really hit the fan. Lisa started calling me 10 minutes after Anna left the restaurant. I listened to a few of her messages, and she was furious that I cheated on her. It almost made me laugh. After an hour of her messages and texts, I blocked her number. I knew she would eventually just call from another phone, but she was driving back from San Francisco, so she couldn't just ask to borrow someone's phone on the turnpike. I went home and packed up all my personal belongings, not just the ones for the trip to Austin. I had time. 4 hours after meeting Anna, I was leaving home, probably for the last time. After depositing most of my belongings in a storage locker, I checked into a hotel near the Los Angeles airport until I found a place to stay. I talked to Emily a few times on the phone. She had gone to a friend's house as her father was now leaving furious messages on her phone. I rescheduled my flight to Austin for the day and left Monday morning. Lisa managed to call my phone a few times from other numbers. Now it was tearful rants about how I could do this to her, why I ruined her career, etc., etc. Apparently, Anna's initial outcry got a lot of people's attention. Then someone posted a pretty accurate account on their blog and called Emily and me players. My comment about Lisa having fun with John was also posted along with the fact that they were together in San Francisco over the weekend. This caused quite a stir in county political circles and at the courthouse. For the rest of the week, I avoided most news from Los Angeles. It wasn't until Friday that I received an email that told me what was going on in Santa Monica. Surprisingly, it was from Margaret, the senior manager in the DA's office. The elderly attorney was apologizing for everything that had happened. She knew that John had been seeing 2 women outside the office but knew nothing about Lisa's involvement. She also welcomed the fact that I retaliated by using the law against the attorney. According to Margaret, that week in the DA's office was eventful. John was in the office Monday morning trying to smooth things over and denying any inappropriate behavior on his part. It's just my daughter rebelling under the influence of a cheating husband, was how he tried to present the story. On Tuesday, Lisa was served with divorce papers on the grounds of adultery. Included in the envelope were photos, DVDs, and a letter from me. At Lisa's scream of horror as she read my note, Margaret and 2 others ran into the office. Lisa collapsed in her chair in shock, and Margaret noticed the photos scattered across the desk. My letter informed Lisa that I wasn't having an affair but hoped that she now had an idea of how I felt about her and this. Man. I told her I couldn't be married to someone I didn't trust, especially now that I found out she had cheated before. On Tuesday, there wasn't much work done at the DA's office. The next day, Margaret was in John's office for a meeting when 4 men in suits suddenly walked in. John was yelling at them for interrupting an important meeting when one of the men informed John that he was under arrest. He was in complete shock as they handcuffed him and led him out of the office. Margaret said they walked him right through the front door of the courthouse and let reporters through who were somehow alerted. I owe Gary a few beers for that. At the end of her letter, Margaret apologized for allowing them to behave in her office. She also asked me to let her know if I needed anything, as I did not deserve this behavior. I'm sure part of her letter had to do with damage control, but mostly I think Margaret was the moral and professional person I always thought she was. Now all my plans for a quiet divorce had gone to hell because of my own stupid impulsive antics with Anna at that restaurant. The Los Angeles news stations quickly learned of John's arrest and the charges against him. As I told Lisa, the story had all the makings of a summer romance: betrayal, revenge, and too much angst. News outlets loved it, and it was quickly picked up by the hungry 24-hour news services. I avoided the worst of it as I was out of town, and they couldn't track me down as I had booked a second hotel room 10 miles away from the one on my itinerary. At work, however, I checked in there, and the reporters positioned themselves around it, trying to catch me. I saw on TV that they were camped out in front of my house. Lisa didn't come out, and they only managed to film my relatives going in and out. Emily had it the worst because she was the daughter who turned in her own father. She was still going to classes and taking exams, so for the first few days, it was pretty easy for the press to find her. Then the school kicked the reporters off campus because they were disturbing the students. It also helped that 2 women who had children with John claimed their own 15 minutes of fame. After wrapping up the last issue, Emily slipped off campus and headed for the airport. The media was disappointed but not too surprised when she didn't show up for her graduation ceremony. After a while, the story receded into the background and stayed there. It heated up when John's trial began, but he pleaded guilty to several charges, resulting in a 20-year stay as a guest of the federal government. Fortunately, his guilty plea resulted in Emily and me not being called to testify. After that, the case completely disappeared off the media's radar, taking Emily, Lisa, and me with it. Oddly enough, after all the publicity, my divorce went through quickly and without a lot of fuss. Lisa signed the papers 4 days after receiving them. I received a letter apologizing for what she had done to me and to us. Returning from San Francisco, she swore in a rage that she would never forgive me for cheating on her. When she found out that she was really the only one who had cheated, she realized how hypocritical she had been. She accepted my offer of a 50-50 split and asked that at some point when things weren't so rough, I agree to meet with her so she could apologize in person. She ended by saying that she would always love me and wished me well. I later learned from her mother that she had quit her job and moved to the Midwest to live with her aunt. John's downfall had a marvelous impact on my career. The FBI gave me full credit in the press for analyzing John's records. Because I was hiding from the same press, I was even more thorough in Austin and found not only the embezzler they were looking for but a second embezzler they had no knowledge of at the time. My firm promoted me and put me in charge of the white-collar crime group. And yes, some joker labeled the team Dave's Heroes. But the best part was when I was assigned an assistant, a recent college graduate looking to gain experience in forensic accounting. I've never enjoyed working late so much. The weeks following the scandal were a whirlwind. My life had been turned upside down, but there was a strange sense of relief that came with it. The truth was out, the divorce was finalized, and John Williams was serving time for his crimes. It felt like a heavy weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I settled into my new role at the firm, leading the white-collar crime group. My team, humorously dubbed Dave's Heroes, quickly became one of the most respected divisions within the company. We tackled some of the most complex financial fraud cases, and our success rate was unparalleled. It was challenging work, but it kept my mind occupied and helped me move on from the tumultuous events that had unfolded. Emily and I stayed in touch. Her father's downfall had been hard on her, but she was resilient. She decided to take some time off from school and travel, using the trust fund her mother had left her. Before she left, we had a long conversation about everything that had happened. We both agreed that it was time to start fresh. "You should come visit me in Austin," I suggested one evening over the phone. "I'd like that," Emily replied. "I think it would be good to get away for a while." A few weeks later, Emily flew to Austin. We spent the weekend exploring the city, visiting museums, and enjoying the local cuisine. It was a welcome distraction from the chaos that had been our lives. Emily's presence was comforting, and it felt good to have someone who understood what I had been through. One evening, we sat on the balcony of my apartment, watching the sunset over the city. "Thank you for everything," Emily said, breaking the silence. "I don't know how I would have gotten through all of this without you." I smiled. We helped each other. It was a team effort. Emily laughed. "Dave's Heroes, right?" "Exactly," I said, raising my glass. "To new beginnings." "To new beginnings," Emily echoed, clinking her glass with mine. As the months passed, I focused on my work and slowly began to rebuild my personal life. I joined a local gym and started running in the mornings. It was a great way to clear my mind and stay fit. I also began volunteering at a community center, teaching financial literacy classes to underprivileged youth. It was fulfilling work, and it helped me reconnect with my passion for helping others. Emily and I continued to stay in touch, though her travels took her all over the world. She sent postcards from every destination, each one a reminder of the bond we had formed. We talked regularly, sharing stories and updates on our lives. Despite the distance, our friendship remained strong. One day, while sorting through some old papers, I came across a letter from Lisa. It was the one she had written after the divorce, apologizing for her actions and wishing me well. I hadn't read it since the day I received it, and seeing it again brought back a flood of memories. I decided to reach out to her. It wasn't about rekindling anything, those days were behind us, but rather about closure. I sent her a simple email, thanking her for the letter and wishing her the best in her new life. To my surprise, Lisa replied almost immediately. She had moved to a small town in the Midwest and was working at a local law firm. She seemed genuinely happy, and it was clear that she had done a lot of soul-searching since the divorce. "Thank you for reaching out," she wrote. "I've learned a lot about myself, and I'm truly sorry for everything that happened. I hope you're doing well, Dave. You deserve all the happiness in the world." It was a short message, but it brought a sense of peace that I hadn't felt in a long time. The wounds were healing, and it was time to fully embrace the future. As time went on, I began to open up to the idea of dating again. I had been single for a while, focusing on my career and personal growth, but I missed the companionship of a partner. I joined a few dating apps, went on a few dates, but nothing seemed to click. One day, while attending a charity gala for the community center where I volunteered, I met someone who changed everything. Her name was Sarah, and she was a lawyer who had recently moved to Austin. We struck up a conversation over dinner, and I was immediately drawn to her intelligence, wit, and kindness. We started seeing each other regularly, and it wasn't long before our relationship deepened. Sarah was understanding and supportive, and she brought a sense of joy and stability into my life that I hadn't felt in years. We bonded over our shared love of travel, food, and helping others. One evening, as we were walking through a park, Sarah turned to me and said, "I'm really happy we met, Dave. You've made this city feel like home." "I feel the same way," I replied, taking her hand. "You've brought so much light into my life." As we walked hand in hand, I realized that I was finally ready to let go of the past and fully embrace the present. The future looked bright, and for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful and excited about what lay ahead. A year had passed since the scandal, and life had settled into a new normal. Emily had returned from her travels and decided to finish her degree in forensic accounting. She moved to Austin and took up a part-time job at a local firm while completing her studies. We reconnected, and it was like no time had passed. One evening, Emily, Sarah, and I were having dinner at my apartment. It was a cozy evening, filled with laughter and good food. We talked about everything, from work to travel plans to our favorite books and movies. "I'm really glad we're all here together," Emily said, raising her glass. "To friendship and new beginnings." "To friendship and new beginnings," Sarah and I echoed. As we clinked glasses, I looked around the table at the two women who had become such important parts of my life. Emily had been there through some of the darkest times, and Sarah had brought love and light back into my world. I felt incredibly grateful for both of them. After dinner, we moved to the living room and continued our conversation. Emily shared stories from her travels, and Sarah talked about her experiences adjusting to life in Austin. It was a perfect evening, and it made me realize how far I had come. The past was behind me, and the future was filled with promise. I had a fulfilling career, strong friendships, and a loving relationship. Life had thrown some unexpected challenges my way, but I had emerged stronger and more resilient. As the night drew to a close, I felt a sense of contentment that I hadn't felt in years. I knew that whatever the future held, I was ready to face it with the people I cared about by my side. The next few months were filled with new adventures and milestones. Emily graduated with honors and accepted a full-time position at the firm where she had been working part-time. She was excited to start her career, and I was incredibly proud of her. Sarah and I continued to grow closer. We spent weekends exploring new places, trying new restaurants, and enjoying each other's company. We talked about our future and made plans to travel together and eventually buy a house. One sunny afternoon, we decided to take a trip to a nearby vineyard. It was a beautiful day, and the vineyard was picturesque, with rows of grapevines stretching out as far as the eye could see. We took a tour, sampled some wine, and enjoyed a leisurely picnic on the grounds. As we sat there, basking in the warmth of the sun and the beauty of the surroundings, Sarah turned to me and said, "This has been one of the best days I've ever had. Thank you for sharing it with me." I smiled and took her hand. "I'm glad you're here with me. You make everything better." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, just enjoying the moment. It was one of those perfect days that you want to hold on to forever. As the sun began to set, we packed up our picnic and headed back to the city. We talked about our dreams and aspirations, and I realized that I was truly happy. The future looked bright, and I was excited to see what it held. A year later, Sarah and I were married in a small, intimate ceremony surrounded by our closest friends and family. Emily was my best person, standing by my side as I said my vows to the woman I loved. It was a beautiful day, filled with love and laughter. We bought a house together and started building our life as a married couple. Every day felt like a new adventure, and I was grateful for the journey that had brought me to this point. Looking back, I realized that the challenges I had faced had made me stronger. They had taught me about resilience, forgiveness, and the importance of surrounding myself with people who truly cared about me. I had found love, built strong friendships, and created a fulfilling life. As I stood on the porch of our new home, watching the sun set over the horizon, I felt a deep sense of peace. Life had come full circle, and I was ready for whatever came next. With Sarah by my side and the support of friends like Emily, I knew that the future was bright. To new beginnings and the promise of tomorrow. Thank you for joining us on Storytime Audio for the journey of love, betrayal, and redemption in Shattered Vows and New Beginnings, the unraveling and redemption after a cheating wife's betrayal. As we close this chapter, let's reflect on the resilience of the human spirit and the power of new beginnings.